101, what is a digital twin?
For sure. So the digital twin, very much what it sounds like, it is a digital electronic version of you. And that copy of you has lots of different dimensions. It includes a physical representation of you, an image, a three-dimensional rendering of you, which could have various states of realism or accuracy. It could contain anatomy through MRIs and other imaging. So a physical construct of you with a genetic component, recognizing your unique genetics, your physiology, your function, your memories can be put into it as far as coaching an AI agent that becomes part of you and knows you. The idea of the digital twin is really recreating you.
Welcome to the Digital Legacy Podcast, where we talk about death and dying in the digital age. If you ever asked, how do I protect myself and those I love if something unexpected happened to me? You're in the right place. I'm your host, Niki Weiss, and together we'll explore how to protect yourself in a world where both your physical and digital legacy leave a lasting impact. And welcome back to another episode of the Digital Legacy Podcast, where we talk about death and dying in the digital age. My very special guest today is Dr. Cory Goldberg. And Cory, you and I met through an associate of ours who said, hey, a longevity doctor who's talking about digital twins. So this is a fascinating conversation. And please welcome to the show and tell us how you got here today.
Thank you so much, Nikki. Well, it's a pleasure, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation. I think it's going to be really enjoyable. When the introduction of our mutual associate, when that introduction was made, my first thought, it's interesting to talk to someone who's an expert in digital assets and death, and I thought about it, and it clicked, and I realized, the line between life and death, and that the continuity between the two, and how what we do is related, is really an interesting topic, and that's obviously what we're going to get into. My background, I'm a plastic surgeon by training, which I did in Toronto, where I currently practice. But my practice over time really morphed a bit, and I went through my own personal health journey in around 2010 with a 50-pound weight loss and a significant lifestyle change, and a very much a change in my own mentality. And it was at the same time I recognized that my patients were suffering health issues, and there was a kind of a pattern of everybody walking through the door. And as I tried to take care of people's aesthetic, I realized a couple of things. One, that in managing people's aesthetic, it was doing much more for them as a whole than just a surface image. And I also recognized that they were also suffering from physical ailments and health issues that were a pattern that really needed to be changed in how we provide health. And that sort of was a segue for me from the aesthetic and plastic surgery into much more of a holistic look at people, and into the premise of longevity medicine and healthy longevity, and trying to help people live better, fuller, healthier, and looking better at the same time. And that's kind of my natural segue into this space in the industry.
And what people don't realize is when they have that health scare, that's usually when they start to think about their mortality, and not before.
Yeah, it's funny. You're born and you grow in a bubble of thinking that you have this infinite life, that you're immortal. You will never suffer harm and you'll never have loss, and then life hits you, and the first time you suffer a loss of somebody in your life, that's a change. And the first time you yourself suffer a loss or a permanent injury or consequence of something that you've done or a decision you made, suddenly there's this recognition of, wow, I'm actually mortal, and there are things that I do that can materially change me permanently, and that's a bit of a smack in the face for people. The people who don't face that till later in life, it's a blessing. But it also means that they don't have to face those realities and think through those things. So there's something to be said about gaining character through loss and those kinds of personal events that change you permanently, that really force you to face those things, and some benefit to doing that earlier in life to sort of get accustomed to it and move through that as you progress in your journey in life.
Well, I had shared with you when we first met that A little over 20 years ago, I actually was very much involved in the longevity space. I had actually purchased an AccuScope and a MyoPulse instrument, which are those biotech that do the impulse therapies, microcurrent therapy. And I was very involved with how to live longer, live fully, die ready. Well, that's my tagline now, live fully, die ready. But I wanted to share that when my mother was, and I was passing away, she was 51 years old when she was just about 51 when she was dying. And when she was on hospice, and the nurse, I realized that I was going to lose my mother. I had lost my father, and now I'm going to lose my mother. And realizing that my genes weren't very good. I didn't have, good genes because of my parents, and I had grandparents who had cancer. I had that moment at 21 years old to realize, like, how do I prevent this from happening to me? And it was the hospice social worker who calmly said to me, the best way to prevent cancer is to live a happy, healthy life. But at 21 years old, I didn't know what that meant. So after my mother died, I was on this journey of I'm going to figure this out. And so that was back in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. So here we are today, 2026. I mean, technology has just what's out there today. I mean, we could talk about CRISPR and how AI is now changing our genomes, and they're talking about being able to resolve cancer in just a few years with all the genetic happenings. So let me take a breath and ask you, as a physician, did you think we would be here 10 years ago?
First off, your story. I'm very sorry for your loss, and I also recognize that the loss that you went through and the advice that staff person at the hospice gave you was advice that changed your life and really set that trajectory to really think this through. And where you are now, very much came from the character that you developed through that. That advice of living a happy and fulfilling life is the best advice that anyone could ever receive, I think, and it's the right message. Your question, I mean, did I foresee, where we are today, as far as our health initiatives and the potential of healthy longevity? The answer, yes, I had some idea, but did I recognize the speed of that change? No, I think that I've been very impressed, and needless to say, the speed of change, when it comes to anything technological, it doesn't follow a linear path. It's an exponential one. And here we are just hitting our asymptote, it would seem. And the progress in the past 5 years has outstripped the prior 20. And so we are uncertain, most certainly in a place that it would have been very hard for most of us to foresee a decade or two ago. And yet we have quickly gone from the traditional anti-aging aesthetic world. I mean, anti-aging used to be about aesthetic. It used to be just about, fix the wrinkle, inject that, cut this. And now we're truly looking at anti-aging as how do you slow the pace of aging, even to an extent where we're almost at the, what's called the longevity escape velocity, meaning that we can reverse somebody's age at the same pace or faster than they're aging. If for every year that you're alive, we can reverse your age by 1 year, we've essentially stopped aging. And there are those who think that we're going to reach that, and that longevity escape velocity and perpetual life is possible. I won't say it's impossible. I think it might be, but I'm still on the fence on that. I don't know that it's a certainty. But I do believe very fully that a child born today has a very realistic objective of living to 150, and I do believe that we could extend past that, and genetic reprogramming is a reality that we're facing right now.
I mean, let's just dive into what it means what it means to live longer. Because as a thanatologist, I say, yes, we're living longer today, but we're also dying longer. And your hypothesis is that we're going to live longer more healthfully, though.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a very important point. First off, who in the heck wants to live 150 years in bad health? I mean, that would be that's a jail sentence. It's a terrible sentence to give. It would be something you would wish on your worst enemy. And of course, the objective is not just perpetually extended, unsatisfying life. It is about extending life in a meaningful fashion. It's not just about lifespan. It's not just about the duration that someone is alive. We want to extend people's health span and what I refer to as beauty span. The duration that you're alive, that you have good health, good vitality and function, and you appear and feel youthful. Those are good quality years. And living to 100 or 120 in that state is very realistic. And the objective of extending life is within that context. It is not about trying to make people die over a longer period of time. That gap between lifespan and health span has gotten greater and greater. That gap between how long do I live versus how long am I healthy for. In North America, at this point, 75% of us have at least one chronic disease, but by the time we reach 65, I mean, it's a terrible state. And in North America, we have not done a good job at managing this preventatively. And that comes really down to how medicine is applied, which I think is changing now. But our goal is to have people live a happy and fulfilling life and extend it for longer so that they can enjoy those good times and good years for more of their life. And at the same time, living fully and preparing for the dying ready.
Life's most inevitable event. So let's talk about Form, which is your center located in Midtown Toronto. I had the privilege of having a private tour of this. Is it 20,000 square feet?
Yeah, we're just short of 24,000 square feet in Midtown Toronto.
It's just, I mean, and that's not a virtual background that you have. That's your actual view. I can attest to that. It is absolutely spectacular. The space is spectacular. Your staff is spectacular. So, 24,000 square feet. So when the hospice social worker said to me, "Oh, you just need to live a happy, healthy life," and I'm like, "Well, what does that mean?" It's not just going out and living life, but there's technology now that is enhancing and enabling people. And we can talk some about the treatments, the treatment rooms that you have, the amazing treatment rooms, and how to either arrest or revert or prolong people's cellular, because that's really what we're talking about. I'm going to take a pause and organize my thoughts here. Like you said, it was in the early 2000s, in the 90s, it was about the visual, like how to beautify someone. So that's with the injections and the cutting and slicing and dicing. And now you're saying we can create that radiance of somebody's youthfulness from the inside out, from a cellular level, right?
Yes. Yeah, very much.
So share with us some of the really cool treatment rooms that you have in your space.
For sure. Maybe let me talk a little bit about philosophy first. The
Okay.
philosophy of the aesthetic industry, and where I think things kind of got off the rails in the past 20 years or so, it became the premise that there was an assumption that we couldn't change aging, that aging was an inevitability, that frailty and decline was a natural part of life. And so the anti-aging premise and the industry was just about painting on the appearance of youthfulness, and with no thought to the inside. And that, over time then worsened in that the industry applied more and more treatment and more tools, higher and higher powered energy devices, lasers, more and more surgery, injectables, fillers, to a point where people are looking abnormal. The focus on a single part of someone's face and trying to make that look like an aesthetic ideal, suddenly that piecemeal concept of beauty became beauty. And the painted on version or overdone versions of beauty, that became accepted as actual beauty. And it misses the mark. It has shifted away from natural beauty. It has shifted away from humans in their natural state. And it is labeled that as anti-aging, which it is not at all. And really, aging is a disease process. It is something that is modifiable. And your aesthetic, your beauty, is very much dependent on your health, in as much as your health is truly dependent on your aesthetic. There is a correlation in both directions, and how you appear does influence your physiology. It influences your psychology. It influences your social interactions. And so that relation between physical health and your aesthetic is a very important one. And that's where we start here. I mean, where we start at Form is the belief that true beauty comes from within, and the best way to aesthetic is through good health. Energy devices, needles, knives, the treatments, those things are available, but those are the layer that you put upon someone by choice after they've achieved health, after they've reached those important metrics, not as the precursor and not as an assumption. Those are the things that are added on after the fact. So with that in mind, sorry, go ahead, please.
No, please. Had a thought about Brian Johnson,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
which is a hot topic. So Brian Johnson, for those that don't know, he is like a human guinea pig on trying to live to that 150, 120 age, right? He is doing his best, spending millions of dollars a year in using some of the technology that you're mentioning, and which is exciting to see. And at the same time, how realistic is it for the common person to be able?
Yeah, you ask a great question, Nikki, and it comes down to, I mean, Brian Johnson, for those who are familiar with him, there are questions to be asked about how he carries himself, because he invests somewhere in the vicinity of $2 million a year in his own health, and every moment of every day he is engaged in managing that. Every bit of food that he consumes is sourced in a controlled fashion. His sleeping pattern, he is in bed and asleep by 8 p.m., and he lives a very restricted life in that regard. Having said that, personally, I have a lot of respect for Brian Johnson, and I think he is a very positive influence on the industry. And the reason that I say that is not because I think that we should all be doing what he's doing. I don't think it's realistic. We don't all just have $2 million every year sitting around that we can put towards that. Most of us have jobs and actually have to live. So it's not that I suggest people live that way, but his premise is twofold. One, as a philosophy, he has the expression, don't die. And I think that that's a great idea, because really, in the present state and the advancement of the science and the treatments we have available, your best bet is to try and stay as happy and healthy as you possibly can, so that as these technologies come online, you can benefit from them the greatest extent. If you were, at your very worst state and you're smoking and you're obese and you're, very unhealthy and you have one foot in the grave, and suddenly a genetic reprogramming comes out that can reverse aging, it's not going to suddenly fix you and make you 20 again. When you've reached that extent, you can't just reverse it. So if you maintain yourself in good health, when these technologies become available, you're in a better position to take advantage of it. So the don't die philosophy is take care of yourself, don't die of something stupid, and that way you can take best advantage of these things as they become available. The second thing about Brian Johnson, which I really respect a lot, is the fact that he is so regimented on himself. He is in essence taking a hit for the team. His hit is that he is the N of one, right? In a normal study, you have to have hundreds, thousands of participants to draw conclusions, because there's no way to control all the variables among people. You try to get a homogeneous group and test stuff out on them and see what it shows. Brian, because he is so regimented in everything he does, and every component of his genetics and his behavior and his diet is so closely registered and tracked, if he does stuff on himself, if he did some mushrooms, some psilocybin, and tracked his response to that, the data that comes from it, because his life is so regimented, actually has validity. So the N of one, he's an experiment of one person, and when he tracks his response to sauna treatments on hyperbaric oxygen, there's actually real validity that comes from it. And you can't necessarily put that on a population or every individual, but there's good information, and he subjects himself to that level of regimented life in order to develop that data. So I think that that's very beneficial. And the last thing really is making people aware that you can do these things, that you can change your life trajectory.
But then we go back to, but is he happy?
Well, it's a hard thing to respond to, because of course what you see on the outside, you can't ever be sure. But I do know one thing. 2 years ago, Brian Johnson made his way to Burning Man, and he looked like a pretty happy camper when he was there. My wife and I are burners ourselves. We were there that year, and we saw him. And you know what? If he can go there and enjoy that environment, that tells me something about his spirit.
I will take that as we could check off that happiness right there. So, quality versus quantity, right? So I think both of us are pretty clear that there is going to be an expiration date on this physical body, right? So let's get into so the concept of a digital twin. So I'm going to let you, for many of our listeners, this might be a new term that they've heard of. My prediction is the term digital twin, just like year and a half ago, 2 years ago, people didn't even know how to say chat GPT. I think the digital twin is another term that people are going to be extremely aware of as more and more people are engaging in this technology and the opportunity to I'm not gonna give the cat away. I'm gonna let you kind of explain to it, but it's a way for us to extend our physical and digital lives. So let me give the mic back to you and explain 101, what is a digital twin?
For sure. So the digital twin, very much what it sounds like, it is a digital electronic version of you, and that copy of you has lots of different dimensions. It includes a physical representation of you, an image, a three-dimensional rendering of you, which could have various states of realism or accuracy. It could contain anatomy through MRIs and other imaging. So a physical construct of you with a genetic component, recognizing your unique genetics, your physiology, your function, your memories can be put into it as far as coaching an AI agent that becomes part of you and knows you. The idea of the digital twin is really recreating you. And from my perspective, in the healthy longevity field, that's a gateway to understanding your health and being able to carry out experiments on an N of 1. If you have a true digital representation of an individual, you could try giving it a medication. And you could say, well, I know from your genetics, from the twins' information, that this would do better, and we would try prescribing that medication to your twin. Well, what happens if a second life-extending treatment or medication is applied to that twin? What happens to the twin? Well, maybe it doesn't do what you expect that it would do. A lot of biologically active supplements and agents that we have that can improve health in one way, body composition or improving your telomere length or any number of different things. You can combine it with something else that actually seems to be very beneficial and is very helpful, and you're taking two things that are really good for you. And together, actually, they're not good for you. They have a counter reaction. They can cancel each other out, and they could even cause harm to you, and you would never know it. So if a study says that one thing is good and another study says something else is good, in the real world, we just assume if two studies say two things are good, you give it to a person and it should be double good. But that's not true. It's not true at all. So this digital twin is a way of carrying out experiments on yourself digitally and finding out how you respond to it. It's also a means of tracking because you can follow in real time this digital twin that you've created of yourself, its health. Ongoing data entry into that with, once a quarter you do some blood biomarkers. You have your wearables. Everyone's got their rings or their other, Fitbits. That information can go into the twin so that it is regularly updated and it actually continues to evolve, age as it were, as you do. So on a given day, it would be able to answer for you how your health is doing, even to an extent where you could have a conversation with yourself about your own health. And you would tell yourself, hey, your heart rate variability is actually is starting to go down. Maybe you should think about doing some meditation today and getting some relaxation because actually you're very stressed right now. And I don't know, if I told myself that, I would probably believe me because I know me pretty well.
Well, and like Brian Johnson, you're looking at the numbers. I mean, data-driven decisions. We're not just guessing at what our biomarkers are. The reason we take heart rate, what is like blood pressure, heart rate, and respiration, like those are the three main when you go into the, if you're in a 911 situation or in an emergency room, they're always going to be looking at those three biomarkers because it gives that, how are you doing today? At the moment, are you in crisis? Now, by having that digital twin, though, are you looking at it more from like someone who is well having the digital twin versus, and I'm thinking about, my son-in-law who has a glioblastoma that is dealing with terminal cancer. If he had a digital twin when he got first diagnosed, is that like a new protocol that potentially long-term conditions and diseases would be following?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I would say there would be exceptions. So, for example, if in reality an individual was to develop some form of malignancy or neoplasm, while that would show up in an MRI and it could physically be put into that twin, the twin manifestations of the symptoms of that as that cancer progressed would show up in your biomarkers, and so your digital twin would have that in there. It would be easy to cure your twin of those issues, but the premise would be you would be able to interact with that twin, see how it's changing, and it would be part of the diagnostic tools that you would have in place to then take care of yourself. And ideally, as you take care of yourself using this tool, your twin would also get better.
I'm just blown away. Because I'm just thinking of the ramifications, how fewer tests would need to be done. A lot, they do MRIs or CAT scans because they're trying to get a clue of what's going on inside. But if you have the digital twin as kind of the window into what's going on, then even with the medications, again, going back to my son-in-law, the protocol they used on him for radiation was not the correct one. And it caused a brain swell, which caused a brain bleed, which ended up creating a stroke. So I'm thinking that if he had a digital twin and they were able to at least run the numbers, whether they were going to use proton therapy, versus, what kind of radiation therapy that they were going to use, they might have been more successful in not putting him at risk. So my question is the digital twin technology really right now in the wellness space, or do you see it moving into chronic care?
So the concept of the digital twin is evolving presently. There are variations of software that exist today to create a rough version. The concept still has to evolve. While the technology exists to do this, I don't believe that I have yet to see anyone who's actually created a reliable digital twin. At least not in the sense in what we're talking about. So this is still an aspirational conversation to some extent, even though we're at the point where I would predict that within the next year or so, it's going to be a reality.
Yeah.
The technology is there to do it. It's just a question of what are the pieces to put together. I don't think that it's going to exist from one entity saying, I'm going to do this, and then just doing the whole thing. There are pieces as far as the imaging, the genetics, the physiology components, the predictive part of this, of knowing what happens when you apply certain treatments to a population, what happens to that. There is still a data component to this. So there is a need for some big data to create this concept. So that's still to develop. But once it's developed, then the opportunity to use it beyond just optimization and treating a normal person, a sort of normal healthy person, that's where it starts. As that twin becomes more advanced and more accurate and has more dimensions to a human, then someone who develops an actual disease process like a malignancy, then you would be able to do mock treatments on that entity, and even potentially mock surgery on them, or digital surgery to see outcomes and actually test things. So, I think the first thing is to develop the technology to be able to create such a twin, put in the predictive component and the large data necessary to do that, then get it to a wellness and optimization status, then move it on to pathology and disease processes and actually being able to test out therapies.
No, that makes complete sense. Before we go into the digital afterlife piece, I want to take a moment to say, how is Form, your center, using digital twins right now?
So we are developing that presently. The point that we've started at is with biological clocks on a per organ basis. And so we have a technology, a platform which allows us to take in blood biomarkers, various specialized tests, including epigenetics and glycosylation and specialty things, physiology, like actual physical testing of a person's parameters, their body composition, their physical abilities, the function of certain organs. All of that information is being put into a biological clock, giving you an idea of how well is each particular organ system working, your immune system, your heart, your brain, which gives us then an organ by organ picture of how is someone doing. Study that came out about a year and a half or so ago, Tony Weiss released a paper on proteomics that found that 5% of people, 20% of people have one organ which is aging much faster than all their others. So 20%, that's 1 in 5. So 1 in 5 of us, there's one organ that's already starting to fail. And that organ is very likely to be the first in the cascade of events that then causes you to be one of those 75% of people that have a chronic disease before you're 65. So the idea of this digital twin, and to get there, one of the first steps is to organ by organ create these biological ages so that we can see how each organ system is doing. That gives us a lever. We can find that one place or two places that there might be a particular issue. The next phase will be putting that into a predictive layer, and we're working with a group that I think is phenomenal. They have a very large data set that over 20 years out of the Mayo Clinic, 120,000 patients that were followed, and that data allows a tracking and an understanding of what is the prediction based on these parameters. That's a predictive layer that we'll be adding in, and then we need to add in some physical dimensions, the cognitive component, and the ability to have an interaction with the twin. So there's a few different pieces that we're going to be putting together. My objective, I would really like to be able to contribute and create a digital twin that works in this environment, that creates the that interactive entity that we can work with for people's health and Healthspan, beautyspan, and lifespan.
My head is spinning, the amount of metadata that you just mentioned. I mean, artificial intelligence is probably the only way to be able to aggregate and analyze, right? I mean, this is
Yeah.
mind blowing.
Yeah, it's true, and the needless to say, it's right place, right time. There's no way. A year ago, there's no way. I mean, as you said, a year or so ago, how many people even have heard of ChatGPT? Now
Right.
AI is rolls off the tongue like it's nothing. The technology, this is needless to say, it's big data. The only way to integrate this level of information and
Right.
this complexity is with AI, and it is an absolute necessity, and amazing that we're at the point that we can do it.
Okay, so let me ask the big question. We have a digital twin. My physical body, though, we have to admit, whether it's at 80 or 120 or 150, there's going to be an expiration date. What happens to my digital twin when my physical body is gone?
So I would say it is an asset in two different ways. First, it's a thing, and I know your specialty is managing those digital things after your demise. So it is a thing, and therefore needs to be managed. Who owns that? What happens to it? Does it have rights? Is there that survive your physical death? So I think there's a lot of questions around it as an asset. But the other way that I would consider it to be an asset is that it's your voice. The concept of creating this physical twin in terms of the function of it, the physiology, the genes, and having it physically react to the digital drug or treatment you might apply to it. That's one part. But the twin is also going to have whatever information you put into it over however much time you take to create this twin. And let's say, for example, rather than thinking of it as I'm going to get this twin, the year of my death, and I think, I better get this thing going because, or else I'm going to die too soon. What if you start when you're a teenager or in your 20s, and you start to create your twin, and you have your entire lifetime to tell it stuff, tell it what you want, give it your pictures, give it your experiences. Everything that you do, think, write can be put into this thing, and this thing becomes more and more like you. It understands you and what you think. It has more and more of your memories. And suddenly, at the moment of your physical passing, you now have an entity which is a physical genetic representation of you. It knows how you function, but it also knows how you think, and it therefore has a good amount of your memory. And in the context of with a purpose, if this thing is being created with a longer term idea in mind of that the continuity from life to death, it's not just about creating something that helps you stay healthy and alive, but throughout the time of training, if it was given information, if it was coached, if it was sort of given guidance to question you, even if it was once a week, it would ask you one probing question. What do you think about this after you pass? Or is this important to you or is that important to you? If it was given that kind of cadence of questions over the course of years, you would have the opportunity to give it your thoughts about what you want to happen after you pass. And that, a will is a very rudimentary document. As I've come to think about it in these past few years, you write down on a piece of paper, this is what I want to happen to this and that, and how often does that get contested, and there's issues, and it's an inert entity. You write that yesterday, and a month from now it's changed, but you don't have the chance to go change it. A digital twin, given that information, it survives you, it knows what you want, you can tell it, but it also has the opportunity to make decisions on your behalf, which you can authorize based on the information that you've given it. So, it's certainly it's an interesting thing to contemplate, and one with lots of potential loopholes, caveats, and issues. But man, if I could die and know that I'm sitting around and I can tell people what I really want, wow.
I mean, it's a Black Mirror episode. It is total Black Mirror. My gosh. Yeah, no, we're there's so many directions we can go in this conversation, but I think that this was amazing. The digital twin piece, I know, I actually just referred somebody, a high net worth individual, who, has a business and he wants to leave a legacy. And so I connected him with one of my contacts who develops digital twins. And for him, it was not so much as the biomarkers as it was for like a brain dump, or, a consciousness dump. I mean, when we talk about Elon Musk's Neuralinks, or I know that Microsoft does also have some neural patterning. And when people think like, you're not going to be able to download your conscience. And I sit back and I remember in the early 90s when someone said to me, we're going to develop a genome. And here we are in the 2020s, and we've got CRISPR. So we cannot not say that there's going to come a time in potentially our lifetime, Cory, when we're in our 50s, that we are going to be able to do, just like we did with the genome, we're able to download our conscience into a digital twin and live indefinitely.
The question of will we be able to live physically indefinitely with genetic reprogramming, and will we be able to live digitally indefinitely with a consciousness dump into a digital entity? I think both of those are open-ended questions.
Yeah. One that I question every day. Is that something? What is it? For me, part as a digital thanatologist, I'm always asking the question, the human side of AI. What does it mean to be human? And being human right now is our physical body, and accepting that our physical body does have an expiration date, but we are in a time right now where we actually have a choice. We have a choice. So this was an amazing conversation. I appreciate your expertise and willing to share it with our audience. So if there's one or two things that they can take away with, what would you want people to start thinking about?
I think the first thing I would say is recognize that aging itself is a disease and it can be modified. And in that regard, that gap between lifespan and health span, that can be narrowed. We can remain healthy and vital throughout our lifetime. And that is realistic, and that's the norm. Frailty, aging, as we've come to recognize it, it is not normal. It is not a foregone conclusion. We do have control over that. And I think the last thing, which is, from a plastic surgeon's perspective, and recognizing the impact that altering someone's aesthetic and physical appearance has on them as a person, that being able to witness that, and witnessing as a surgeon the difference in the quality of people's tissue depending on their lifestyle and their state of happiness, and those things are very much related. Your aesthetic affects you and your physical health, and your physical health is absolutely, it shows up in your aesthetic. So with that, we have the opportunity to be beautiful, healthy, and live long, fulfilling lives. And these things all, in fact, in my opinion, are one and the same. Healthspan and beautyspan to me are identical pursuits. And so I really believe that the future is a world where we have healthy, fulfilled, functional people. I'm hoping to make it to 120, and I'm going to be on the ski slopes while I do it, and going to Burning Man with my wife the whole time.
And at the same time, you also have all of you're kind of buttoned up though. You have your legal, financial, physical, digital. Like you have your life, your administrative life ready if life did happen, even though you're planning on living to 120. But if life happened, you're still okay. Make sure that everything is taken care of.
I want to live fully and die ready.
Thank you. And with that,
it's the best advice, and I really thank you so much, Niki, for the time. I really appreciate it.
it's great. And so where can people find you, and how can they learn more about the forum?
Forum in Toronto, our website, formfacebody.ca. I can be found at beautyspan.com. Dr. Cory Goldberg, MD, is my Instagram handle. And certainly I'd be happy to see anyone who has an interest in aesthetics or longevity medicine in Toronto. Of course, you're welcome back anytime. We can get you connected to some of the fun therapies and things we're bringing in here. I think I need to have a conversation with you offline, because I'm not as ready as I would like to be. So I think I will engage your services to help me get there.
All good. And with that, thank you so much for being with me. I appreciate your time.
My pleasure, Niki. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Digital Legacy Podcast, where we talk about death and dying in the digital age. I hope this conversation inspired you to take control and plan for the inevitable to protect yourself and those you leave behind. Don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter at digitallegacypodcast.com. Remember, life is full of surprises. What happens after you die shouldn't be. So keep your passwords safe and your playbook up to date.